username mapping has existed now for a few months, and exists in the event that you are maybe a large scale enterprise client and you have multiple analytics platforms, and unfortunately your usernames in those platforms don't match. You want them all connected to Curator, but Curator needs some way to know who's who and how to connect these different usernames together. So we have three possible username format options here, and here are the examples on the right that I'll point to. So you can get just the username, you can get a prefix domain coming from maybe Active Directory, and then you can also get an email. And sometimes you have combinations of these across your platform. So we have created a username mapping feature, which again has already existed, that can allow you to specify what formats the usernames are in your various platforms. So you can see here I have a Tableau platform and a ThoughtSpot platform. The front-end user platform specifically points to the format coming back from your authentication source. So say that's Okta. Maybe Okta is giving you a username format that has a prefix domain. Maybe Okta is giving you an email. But then Tableau and ThoughtSpot are just username only. So you could make that change, and then Curator should be able to resolve all of those users together into one unified user in Curator. Now, on top of that, an added complication that we've seen in some clients is that the domain is actually different across their various platforms, which adds another layer of confusion for Curator when trying to decide who is who. So we've added a domain mapping feature, which you can see gives you an option to add as many into this list as you want to map a specific domain to another domain when going between your platforms. So say for Tableau, I want to map the domain from whenever it's translating my front-end user format to my Tableau user format. And you can see it automatically says, hey, you have username only selected, which doesn't have a domain. So it'll go ahead and disable that for you. But in this case, I'll go ahead and make it an email address. That way we can see it. So for my Tableau connection, maybe I'm getting, let's just say InterWorks back from my front-end user here, which in this case would look something like this, InterWorks /Curator. But then when I go to Tableau, instead of being Curator at InterWorks, it actually needs to be at IW. And so you can see this just gives you more options when mapping between your platforms. So you can specify various domains for your platforms. And this should allow you to reconcile any of those unfortunate differences that you might have across platforms.
Just a quick one, does the front-end user domain where you've put in InterWorks, does that usually need to match what's on the Samuel platform?
In this case, it would, because my front-end user format would be coming, in the example that I laid out here, would be coming from like Okta. Okay. And so all of your users from Okta are going to be coming back with this domain. Or maybe it has multiple domains. So I could do Lions Corp for my other domain, but then it's just LC, an abbreviated version of that when we're going over to Tableau. So it would always have that domain for that specific user prefixed. And then when I'm translating it to the email address, I'm going to find this specific string in that domain and change it to this whenever I change it to an email format like so.
So if you scroll down to front-end user format again, to build off of what Mohammed's asking, that should that be the format that the user logs in with, or is that something that we can change for the generic like default if they log in with, say, jlyons@interworks.com and you want it everywhere to be IW? Can you change that and change the default, or is it that just kind of like telling the system what it's coming in as a starting point for translating in another area?
Exactly. Yeah. So this is changing it. This is just specifying the format on the way in. This isn't yet changing anything. So if you were to log in from Okta and it was Lions Corp /JLions, because it has that prefix domain, then that's what you're going to see on your front end users options here. But then say for Tableau, it actually is an email address. Well, if I go over to my Tableau users, what you'd see with these settings here if I'm using the Lions Corp /JLions user, would be jlions@lc.com for my Tableau username here in the Tableau users section.
Okay. So if I wanted my front end users to say not have a domain or something like that, I couldn't adjust it there. That's just literally just telling the system what to expect coming in.
Yes, you can adjust it by the time it's going out to actually connect to another platform. So if you wanted it to drop the domains for your platforms, you could do this. Now your users here, the base username will still have the prefix domain, but when you're actually looking at whenever it's sending API calls to Tableau or ThoughtSpot, it would be just the username piece. There is also the option, if you do, and this isn't related to what I've just built, but just to answer your question, there is an option in SAML. If I pull it up here, is it different? No, it's going to be advanced to strip the domain prefix. So if you don't have to do anything fancy, if you just have to rip that domain prefix off and everyone else is just going to get that base username, you can use this option. And then it'll actually strip that off on the way in from SAML. So that means your front end user here will just be the username as well, if you use this option.
Okay, cool. Of course, you have to use SAML for that particular option, but yeah, I'm following.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
So just to understand, when you switch that one to username only and it basically grays out that area, that's basically like, I mean, the connection then doesn't really do anything at that point.
Well, yeah. So an example that you might run into is if this is username only and this is a prefix domain, I'm going to Tableau. So if this was an example where, yeah, so this wouldn't necessarily do anything here. This is just to keep people from accidentally doing something that doesn't make sense, basically.
Okay. And then you would suggest, like, if let's say I was coming into this as, new environment and everything like that, and they didn't know what was going on. I didn't know, that they needed to do mapping. Basically, the best way to check would be checking like what the front end users are that it's creating with the usernames there, and then checking the Tableau users. Does the Tableau users pull them in the case, or if like I said, it's brand new site, or would I just need to really go verify that on the Tableau server instead?
Yeah, the debugging step, if someone was like, well, I'm logging in and I'm not getting any access to Tableau content, would be to go to Tableau server and see what your usernames look like. Cool. You can also probably get an example of that if they're not using a personal access token in your Tableau connection. If they're using a username credential, you should see an example of a Tableau username format for the REST connection.
Good point. Thanks.
So the other thing that we have coming out this next release is a batch create option for groups. Now, say you have like 10 Tableau groups that you want to create. Well, if I hit new front end group, I could come in here and I could choose this, and I could choose the connection, all the sites. I can choose the default site. I can choose, let's do admins, and then I'll call this admins. And then I can hit create. Okay, now I got to go make another group. And I got to do that 9 more times. Obviously, that is kind of a cumbersome process. And that's just to say if you have 10, imagine if you have like 50 that you're wanting to use. So now we have an option to batch create. And it'll basically repeat the process exactly as I've done. Normally in the creation process, you can add multiple groups, and you can even go cross-platform to try and curate all of the users into sort of a unified curator group. But if you're wanting to just have one platform group in your front end group, and you're wanting to create a bunch of those, the batch create is going to be exactly what you're looking for. So this first page, you can choose where you want to pull that group list from. So ThoughtSpot doesn't really have a concept of sites. So if I choose that, it's just going to get all the ThoughtSpot groups. But Tableau does have a concept of sites, and each of those sites have different groups. So maybe, again, I just want to pull the default group. So I'll just check that. And I'm going to say preview. And this might take a second to load. Oh, no, that was pretty quick. And so you can see I've gotten a big table of groups from Tableau and from ThoughtSpot. And you can sort. You can say, I just want to look at my Tableau, or I want to look at my ThoughtSpot. I want to sort by site. Maybe you've selected multiple sites and you want to look through that way, or maybe you just want to select sort by names. You can do select all, deselect all. So if I come in, I can choose, I'll just choose a few groups here. Let's make sure to get a Tableau one too. And what this is going to do is it's going to create 4 front-end groups, all with these single platform groups selected. So they hit create, scheduled to be created. And if this should only take a couple minutes, but if you want to watch it happen, you can come over here and watch our queued processes happen. I'm just going to go ahead and go back to front-end groups. And then I'm going to speed things up. And you can see it gives you a status update as well up here on the top. If you come back here and you don't immediately see what you think you should see. And there's my 4 groups. So that process I opened up with, where I went through and I had to select all the site and the connection and then the group itself and then name it, that was all done for me through this batch create process and creating 4. And obviously you can create way more than 4 at once if you'd like. But this should allow you to do things like using these groups for front-end group overrides. So you have different groups that need different logos, different colors, etc. If you have a multi-tenant setup, or maybe just if you want to use it for restrict access in the navigation.
Okay, so basically, what we've added for this sprint is the ability to, or we kind of unified all the file uploads. So anytime we have a rich editor on any of like the models, so for example, the loading screen, and you come to upload an image, so that image would automatically upload into our file system. So you will see if I go to files, this new image should appear there. So previously that used to upload into Winter's default location, which sometimes used to have issues like permissions, and then the image would disappear. So now this is all leveraging our file system. And we've also added this. So we've modified this functionality to also look at our file system. So here I would get all the files that I have and I can just insert those into the editor. And then this should also work with so the one thing we added is the ability to upload videos directly. So I can like add a video and that would also be uploaded into our file system. So essentially we've just like unified all the file upload elements. So whenever you get a rich editor, it should be using our file system. There's not much on this one. We basically just added, and you might not be able to see this because it's really quick. We've added a loading animation on the Explorer view. So yeah, basically it would show the animation until the content has loaded. For me, it's not that bad, but I know people who have like a lot of dashboards, like over 100 or even more. So in that case, it might show them the loading animation for like a few seconds. So yeah, previously it would just be blank. And for some people, it was blank for over 10 seconds. So they just thought it was broken. But yeah, we've added that small loading animation there.
Yeah, so the notification update that I did is for some one-off notifications on the notification page instead. So if we go to the notification page, for example, under the warnings, this one is just for testing, so you won't see this one in your actual instance. But some particular notifications will be one-off, which is like they just will show up one time. So usually what we had to do is go to your event logs and then manually delete out the warning from your event logs. And a lot of clients didn't know how to go about doing that and wasn't the most intuitive process. So now what we have is, instead of that, we have a mark as read button. So if you go to that view details link, it'll take you directly to the event logs where that warning is. And instead of having that warning populate multiple times, such as having to save, resave themes is one, for example, you can just go to your notifications, mark it as read, and then it should disappear from there. And then if you go to that same warning in your event logs and refresh, it tells you mark as read and the error message, and gives you some information on the user that marked it as read as well. So you can always go back and see which user, in this case it's me, that marked the one-off notification as read. So you can go back and troubleshoot if needed to be. And yep, that is about it.
So Power BI has both dashboards and reports, and it functions very similarly to the way that the Tableau dashboards work on the exports, where you can have the option to include the dashboard thumbnails. So I got both of my dashboards and reports selected here, and I'll go ahead and also export the thumbnails. And I've also made some other changes to this page to like things that were just Tableau only, like we didn't have Tableau in front of them. And I don't have everything enabled that Tableau has, or there'd be a lot more, but kind of like made sure that all of this was also listed in a alphabetical list. So now that we've done our export, we can go ahead and import that. So this is what the preview page looks for the import. I'm going to go ahead and create a copy this time. Be able to show that it is actually importing the stuff. So go ahead and import that. We got success for everything. So when I go back to my content listings, we can see that both of the copies were created, and the thumbnail also was able to be exported and imported correctly. So that's pretty much it.
Okay, so what we've added here previously, you could go in and create API keys that allowed clients to be able to hit their portal and do things kind of in a programmatic way. It's great. We've got a ton of features out there, ton of different API endpoints. The trouble is, if you just want a process to be able to, let's say, list out menu items, or maybe even create menu items or something like that, you don't necessarily want to open that API key up to be able to do anything. We've got a ton of API endpoints out there that some are kind of trivial, but some are very important, where you can do a lot of things, and if somebody nefarious got a hold of it, they could break a lot of stuff. And so what we've added in this next release is the ability to restrict access of what each API key can do. So you can come in here, if you're familiar with API key screen, this is what you'll see. You get your API key, you can set an owner, you've got your documentation here with all the different kind of endpoints. That's all staying the same. The addition here is this field at the bottom where we can restrict access. And so if I turn that on, you see you've got a whole bunch of new fields that show up, one for each kind of area. So they're broken out into the same areas that this drop down is. So you can go through there and you can say, okay, I want them to have access to content, but maybe not data manager, or whatever your use case is. And so if you expand some of those sections, you'll see here are the allowed endpoints, here are the denied endpoints, and you can move them back and forth. And so if I come into data manager, you can see here it's got all of them, but I don't want them to have all of them. So I can come in here and I say, well, I don't want you to have that. I don't want you to have that. And you can go on and just populate this as needed, hit your save button. And then if somebody tried to use one of these endpoints under the data manager, they're going to get an access denied. And that's pretty much the gist of it. It's going to be basically invisible to almost all of our users, but the select few who actually utilize our API and have the security concerns, now they'll be able to, put some security policies in place.
First thing that Mark has for us is a page builder update. More specifically, it is an update for how we bring in content, sort of unifies the way that we bring it in and specify which content within those groups of content that we would like users to see. So he has an example here of our Explorer element, and previously you could select the content type, or rather the way it is now, you can select the content type, and then through a series of toggles, you can sort of drill down to the ability to eventually restrict within that group of content specific pieces based on keywords. But the update now in the April release is going to allow you to do that more easily and on a more granular level, by allowing you to not only select the type of content, which he's showing you here now. We're going to bring in some tiles, but we have this content selection section. So not, as I was mentioning earlier, not only does it allow you to select the type of content, but it also allows you to filter that content and sort it as well. So you have the ability to manually bring in content, but we also are going to have different types of content based on groups. So like Tableau dashboards, Power BI dashboards, files, things like that. And then you can then filter that content based on user behavior or keywords. Those user behaviors being things like most recently favorited, or most favorited, or even just content that you would like to feature. And you can see that use of that list here. And then finally, you can select the number of pieces of content that you want displayed on the page. So it can be anywhere from 2 up to I think 6 or 8 pieces of content. And then once you've created those settings, you can then go in and even change the element type, and it'll still respect those parameters that you put in place. So it's still going to bring in, for this example, your files. It's going to bring in all your files, and then it's going to sort them by the most recently viewed, and it'll show 2 at a time. In addition to that, you still have all your element styles within the page builder. So that'll, change the dimensional elements and the way it shows up on the page. Yeah, that is the update to bringing in content. Just a small update to make the ability to have two different types of buttons within your portal. So in this example here, it shows some buttons that are linking out to different types of content. So these are great examples of a way that you can put links in your portal to get folks to the content that they need. And within that, you can set your primary and secondary button visual characteristics. So if you, for example, here he has a blue with a button with a gray text color to sort of match the rest of the UI within the page. And then if you want, you can also change your primary button color to maybe sort of mirror that. And we also have our cancel button, more granular settings to the UI there. So like, for instance, if, you know, for a cancel button, you're going to want your users to know like, oh, hey, like something significant's about to happen here. So you might want to change that to like a red color, so that that UI sort of matches up with what's going to happen. And then he's going to show us how we can sort of toggle back and forth between selecting those secondary and primary button characteristics. So once you create those settings and save them, you can go back to your page. And then when you're editing your button settings, you can, this has the secondary button selected, but then you can switch it over to primary and get that different visual experience that you have that you've set up in your themes. So that is button update.